I've been rather surprised recently whilst having conversations with other watch enthusiasts, other people that I know both online and in the real world, when a certain brand keeps coming into the conversation, a brand that you can buy on Aliexpress. And that brand, the one that has been mentioned multiple times, like too many times to be a coincidence, is Farasute. Hello, you're watching James. My name is James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about the brand Farasute. I'm really not quite sure how you pronounce it, but what I can say is they've caught a lot of people's attention, and I have to admit they've caught my attention too, and I've been watching a couple of them, thinking and certainly seriously considering buying one for myself. And today I'm going to share with you 10 that I have found that I think look amazing. And this is not just a sort of a wish list for this one particular brand from AliExpress. I'm actually asking you a question because I've decided I'm definitely going to buy at least one of these, but I'm struggling to figure out which of these 10 that I'm going to buy for myself. So I want some of your advice. I want you to leave a comment in the video, this one here, to tell me which of these 10 you think I should buy. But of course, because these 10 have not been in my collection, today's video is not about recommending them to you. I'm just wanting to draw your attention to them and also get your assistance in picking which one to buy for myself. But I am going to leave some affiliate links to all 10 of these watches if you happen to want to go and buy them for yourself. And I do also ask, if you own one of these watches from this brand, or you end up buying one of these watches, please let me know what they're like. I truly want to know. I'm truly going to be buying one off this list today, but in order to show you them, I'm going to move over to my desk and share with you these 10 watches. And in particular, you should definitely stick around for the last one because it's surprising in a couple of different ways. So I'm really struggling to figure out which of the ones that I'm going to show you are going to be entering to my collection. In fact, it might actually end up being more than just one, but I want to show you the ones that I am looking at. And yeah, stick around to that last one. It's not cheap. It's certainly the most expensive one that I'm going to show you today, but when you put it into the frame of what it is, well, just stick around to the end of the video and you'll see it, because firstly, I'm going to start with one that I think is probably leading my sort of wish list at the moment. This is obviously not an original design at all. It reminds me a lot of a very well-known, rather expensive watch, but for $240 US, you can get this watch with a mechanical movement. It has one of those hang zen movements, but it also has sapphire crystal, has water resistance, and it comes in this orange, but also this gray, and also this sort of almost, they call it red, but I think it's almost like a maroon. And it comes on this quite an interesting sort of Milanese style bracelet. And I like the dimensions of it, 40 millimeters. Nice and thin, nice and short lug to lug, having that hang zu movement, which I actually quite like. I've now had a couple of them and I quite like them. Sapphire crystals, 50 meters of water reserve, water resistance, I should say, but it's definitely the design of it that has grabbed me. Oh, I do like it, and I'm never going to own the original. It's completely outside of my price range. So this is a leading contender for me. But this is probably the first one that initially caught my attention. This was the first from the brand that entered my wish list. I quite like tank watches. I like tank watches that perhaps, or these sort of square watches that are a little bit different. And this one has a really different case, but also a really nice looking dial. So it really reminds me of a vintage watch, but with something a little bit different. Just over $200 US, available in this salmon color and a black color. Probably definitely the salmon color that would be my choice. But I think that is really cool. And being an automatic movement as well, it sort of ticks all the boxes for me. You might start seeing why I'm having problems with picking one at the moment, because it has a case diameter of 31 across here, and on these sort of style watches you do not want that to be big. Lug to lug of 42, which is nice. In fact, that's probably maxing out what you really want on this style of watch. Sapphire crystals, 30 meters of water resistance, has the Zhangju movement, which there you seem to be using, but I like the idea of it being what I sort of consider a vintage looking watch, but with a whole heap of character, but obviously it's still a new watch at a relatively affordable price. This is probably one of the more subdued watches on this list, and I deliberately wanted to show you the black first because it is a little bit more subdued. But then when you flick to silver, it starts looking a little bit more interesting with blue hands. And then when you look at the salmon, that's also very interesting. And check out the power reserve. I think that's what really probably captures my attention most on this one, that interest factor on the dial. I'm not a huge Roman numerals person, but I like the way they've done it. Look how they've gone inwards, outwards, inwards, outwards. That's quite cool. And this one is a seagull movement powered with 80 hours of power reserve. But there's something on the dial that you're going to notice, because not only does it have the brand name, but it has classic and creative. That tends to be on quite a few of them. That's probably not my favorite element of them, but that aside, I think that's a good looking watch. And the case doesn't disappoint either. That looks nice, but then check out the movement on this one. That's a beautiful looking movement. 80 hours of power reserve it says, and it says it's a seagull movement. Oh, I'll almost buy it just to have a look at that particular movement. But we mentioned, I think it was a 40mm case, and now we can see that it is under 48mm lug to lug, which that's a nice set of dimensions that I always appreciate. This is probably one of the sort of more out there designs for me, something that doesn't resonate with me as much. It's lower on my list, but I like the fact that it is a Peacock mechanical watch powered chronograph for under $600 US. So that's not cheap, but think about a Peacock movement, and they are not always the cheapest. It's a chronograph mechanical movement, which tends to be more expensive, and it's a good looking watch. And you also might see a bit of a theme that I just do like silver dials with blue hands, and maybe that's partially why I like this one here. But you can see it is a 38mm case, just over 11mm thick, ink excluding the crystal. Okay, so it's probably about 12 or 13, which is not too bad. Nice, super tight lug to lug, but it's that Peacock automatic movement in a watch this price, which is actually quite impressive. Oh, hello, sorry to interrupt. I hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are enjoying the video, I'd just like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. You just have to click on that little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does make a big difference to me and this channel, and really gives me that motivation to continue making content. But let's get back to this video. And what a beautiful looking watch this one is. And it's a tourbillon. I've seemed to have had a bit of a thing with tourbillons recently, probably since I started to find that there are some Chinese tourbillons that are worthwhile actually owning, and they are somewhat affordable. Okay, yes, still just under 700 US, so not cheap, but when you take into perspective that it's a tourbillon and then it is a watch that looks like this, then bit of perspective maybe shows you that it might be worthwhile. A couple of different color variations. If I was into gold, which I'm not specifically into gold, I think that stands out. So for me, probably the blue one is the one that I would choose. But what's rather impressive about this watch, the previous watch, and I think this brand, is their choices in movements, because this is a Peacock tourbillon movement. They're not particularly cheap. It is a nice looking watch. It has all the functionality of something very different. It's relatively affordable. Yeah, this one, I see now why people have been talking about this brand as much as they have. And there's just something about a regulator that keeps grabbing my attention. I've not owned one yet, and I keep looking at them from different brands. And this one at 150 or just under US dollars from a brand that is capturing my attention with a dial that looks like this, well, this might actually end up being in my collection. Even if it's not my first choice, it might end up being my second choice. But I think I quite like that silver. Yeah, I think ooh, no. All right, that green. Now that's interesting. Mostly because of the combination of the green and the silver. What's this one? Ooh, okay, maybe this one. No, this one. No, okay. Sorry. I think that one. That one's the one for me. Yeah, I like that one. And it's a good size, 39mm. It's only 8mm thick. That's incredible. That'll be interesting to see whether that's with the sapphire crystal or not, but that is super thin, partly because it has a seagull manual mechanical movement. And I'm really starting to appreciate seagull movements. I think in the past I sort of put them as the more affordable movements, but the more I own, the more I experience, the more I learn about them, the more I actually really quite like them. And in a movement or a watch that looks like this, it's a good choice, especially in this price range. And another one that I don't think I'm definitely going to buy. It's probably on the lower on my list, but it's a jump hour, and I've owned quite a few jump hours now, and I'm just thinking, well, do I want another jump hour? But I'm also thinking, if I am going to have another jump hour, maybe I should get a good jump hour. And for $200 from a brand that seems to be particularly good, might be a good choice. A couple of different color variations. I think I quite like, strangely enough, the silver. And I think that's actually a really nice kind of sweet spot, especially for a very dressy watch with all this sort of guilloche kind of style on the dial. 44 overall and only 36. So it's going to have a little bit of a delicate sort of feel on wrist, which I actually think can be quite nice, especially for a dressy watch. Okay, this one excites me a lot. $380, but have a look at the design of this one. You can see that it is, well, it reminds me of, well, it reminds me a lot of a Seiko that I owned recently with an enamel dial, but I don't think this is an enamel dial, but it is, well, a chronograph, but with a slightly different, interesting look to it. I need to show you some other pictures of this one because it looks fantastic. And that price range for a watch that looks like this, that functions like this, could be quite intriguing. So it has a nice size to it, 40 millimeters, probably just over 13 when you add the crystal in there, 48 lug to lug, which for me is a sweet spot. 40 by 48 is pretty good. I think a lot of people like that. Again, a seagull movement, the ST19, which is great. 20 millimeter lug width, which is nice because I get the feeling I will want to swap that out. 30 meters of water resistance, but to be honest, it's the design of this one and this idea of a chronograph with an almost sort of mono pusher, but not a mono pusher. It just gives it an interesting look. Now this one, well, this one actually caught my attention because it reminds me, well, of a very different watch to what this one looks like, but it's sort of grabbed my attention for that reason. But let's sort of exclude that and just look at the interesting complications, because you've got the day of the week there, you've got the month, and you've got the date in this sort of retrograde date function. So you can imagine this is going to tick, 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 flick, which I think that's quite cool. Now, of course, I showed you the silver version, but the black actually might be a little bit better because of the contrast between the two different colors. And you can see then the sort of texture that's on the dial. But I think the green looks okay too. I think maybe I would black or so. There you go. I think I'd probably end up going to black. And you can see this one just here. It's a 38 millimeter case, 10.6 thick, and that is excluding the crystal again. So we've got to keep that in mind. But it's got a fly back calendar, which is actually partly the reason why this one grabs me, because I like the idea of having something that flicks back like that. And it is a Seagull, fully automatic, mechanical, customized movement according to them. But it's the last one that I think is very exciting. I don't think I'm going to end up buying it, probably because of the price. But I'm trying to get over that hurdle a little bit with some of these brands, because although they might be quite expensive when you put it into the context of an Aliexpress watch, well, if you put it in context against other watches outside of Aliexpress, well, then they look incredibly amazing. Recently, I bought this one from Sagez. It's a Tourbillon, and it cost me 1,000 Australian dollars, which was a huge amount of money to spend on a watch that I could buy from AliExpress. But now that I own it, I absolutely love it. And it is so much better than it should be. And if I put it against any sort of mainstream brand that could even slightly match this, well, it then becomes a bargain. And that is what might this watch be that I'm about to show you now. Yes, so almost $1,000 for a relatively simple looking watch. But does anybody see the design that I see? Do you see the Omega? Do you see the Longines? And do you then see the Swiss movement that this one comes with? So this is a 40 millimeter watch, which has a sector dial, which reminds me a lot of, yes, that Omega, or possibly a Longines, but it has a manual wind Swiss movement. It has an ETA movement, in fact, which that pushes it ahead a fair bit for me, also beyond the design as well. But it is a, let's have a look. Yes, the Swiss ETA 6497. It has heat-treated blue hands, has a power reserve of 46 hours. It has a case of 40 millimeters, just over 10 millimeters, 30 millimeters of water resistance and sapphire crystal. And I just think that looks gorgeous. In fact, look at that watch there, see the design, and then see this Omega. See the design, and then see this Omega, and then see this Longines. These are the two watches I see when I look at this watch, albeit not exactly the same. You can see the position of the sub-second is different. It's a little bit different, but I can tell you that it is significantly cheaper than both of those. That Omega is over 10 grand on the second-hand market, and that Longines is getting up there as well, which is why this one has stood out to me so much, partly because of the design and the look of it, but also having that ETA movement. And it's also because those two other Swiss watches have been in the back of my mind, but they are just too much for my own personal collection to put into that collection. So maybe this one might be rather interesting. But I'd really like to hear your thoughts about all the watches that I've showed today. Which one do you think I should buy? It'd be quite interesting to know if you think that last one, that expensive one with that ETA movement, is something that you think I should consider as well, even though it is a little bit more expensive. But after you leave me a comment telling me which of these 3 or these 10 that I've shown you, in fact, that I should probably consider to buy myself and feature on the channel, well, maybe you could watch one of my other videos next.